Who are you?
I'm someone who has officially watched a whole season of Star Trek Enterprise, one of 48 people worldwide. My name's Peter.
And I'm Joseph, and this is V'ger Please, a heinous trip at Warp 5. And I meant Who Are You because I literally haven't seen you in like 2.5 years, like physically in person.
I'm reminded of the last time we podcasted in person, and I don't like the eye contact.
Yeah, it's too sexual. Yeah, it's too. It's
I'm going to be
so
looking at my
charged.
tablet.
So obviously,
I don't like having to wear pants for this podcast.
Well,
This
you're
is
not
terrible.
technically. You're wearing shorts at the moment.
Swishy shit.
And by the way, you have nothing to be ashamed of body wise.
Oh,
All right. I want the internet to know, and I want our Discord to know you're in better shape than me.
well, side note, I've been starving myself.
So
I've skipped dinners for 3 days up to now until I had your delicious hamburgers. So
yeah, Peter and I, while we see each other each week, haven't actually podcasted in person since the coronavirus.
the old Rona, yeah.
So we decided that it was time for us to get together, and what better occasion to do that than the end of season 1 of Enterprise? We have finished it, us and 47 other people, and then all of you who are listening, thank you for that.
That we've dragged along with us.
And now here we are to lay it to peace with our rip as we normally do. Before we get into our awards, and we have at least one new one that I think we
Minimum
liked.
one. We got some good fan submissions that
We
we're gonna
did.
incorporate.
And thank you to everyone from the V'ger Please Trauma Support Group, as well as our Discord, for your contributions and discussion. It's actually helps focus up our own discussion, so we do appreciate it. But before we get into awards, we wanted to talk about the show more generally, and just what is Enterprise? What was season 1? What's our takeaways from this as the next thing after Voyager was over? We've touched on this a little bit as we have gone through the season, particularly near the end, and perhaps an overall sense of disappointment in the quality level of what we witnessed.
Absolutely.
There's some bigger questions about, is this as sci-fi as prior Star Trek entries? Is it more just kind of straight action adventure? Was this just a byproduct of their making it a prequel, or was it something they did on purpose? So we're going to get into all of that. But the very first thing I have on this list was a note that you made about the moon.
I was listening to the episode. God, I don't even know. Maybe, was it Terra Nova? Maybe. Well, you mentioned, because I was like, I don't know. In not Generations, First Contact.
Mm-hmm.
There's New Berlin. There's Lake Armstrong.
Yeah,
300 million people living on the moon. And it made me think, like, you could live on anywhere in the Alpha Quadrant, basically in Federation space. All the beautiful outposts and colonies and Risa and whatever, and you're going to live on the fucking moon. God forbid we acknowledge Picard and we say, all right, well, there is a worldwide transporter system. And if you can transport from Earth's orbit off a starship down to Earth, and clearly you can transport from Earth to the moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you could like work and hang out in like really cool, prestigious cities, but then live in a real shithole
on the moon.
On the moon,
yeah.
So is like the moon where like all the gentrified areas were relocated off the.
Are you saying is moon filled with Section 8? Is it filled with Star Trek Section 8?
Is the moon Earth's trailer park?
I would say that if I were treating that question seriously, Earth is probably like the bougie, established property owning legacy people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why colonization is popular. Like, if you are a human living in the wonders and majesty of the United Federation of Planets, why would you leave Earth? Well, probably because you're living in some apartment building somewhere, and you can't buy a house because every house is owned generationally by the families that owned that house 3 centuries ago, right?
Fair, yes.
Because while we understand money
assuming it survived the Holocaust of World War III.
Right. We know money...
Which may or may not have happened.
You know what?
I want to address that real quick. It keeps coming up as such a fucking sore point in the Star Trek world. Like, the economy, it's hard to explain the economy. and the exact situation and circumstances of World War III. So much things mismatch. I want to go on file, and I'm going to say that I'm a World War III denier.
You're going to say it just never happened.
It's
something we've never seen in Star Trek. It's true.
It is a figment of Federation propaganda. And
all we've got is this one video from Pike. They brought this as a show and tell to this one planet.
And I have to assume that at that point, they've got pretty good Photoshop. Should we talk about Strange New Worlds at all? I watched the one with the kid getting plugged into the computer.
You know what? I have a proposition for you. Do you think you're going to finish it?
Finish the series?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, why don't we do special content where we talk about Strange New Worlds? We have teased some discussions.
Mm-hmm.
We if you're in like all the way to finish.
I mean, I have to at this point. There's not that many left.
You are a completionist. Well, yeah. Let's save further Strange New World discussion, and maybe that's subscriber count.
Oh, paywall it.
There you go, paywall it. You want to know what we think of New Trek? You have to give us like $2. That's how we operate.
So yeah, I think the moon is for the help.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
I agree. Think that World War III never happened.
Listen.
It's my miserable, biased views of the future.
Speaking of misery of the future, let's talk about Enterprise as, is it Star Trek-ish enough? Is it Star Trek-y enough? Does it feel like Star Trek? This is something that I think you mentioned. I think some of our fans have mentioned. I think that a lot of people who are fans of Trek and have watched Enterprise at least think to themselves, it's different.
It's very different. And I think that based on our conversations, you being the person who's seen all this, there are multiple versions of Star Trek Enterprise. There is the first season, there's a second season, and then the third and fourth season seem to be their own. And the first season especially is not good. And I sat down, I did the math, I did some breakups as to what episodes I liked and I didn't like, and I've got my own rating scale on that. But I think in a lot of ways, I can see where Bran Braga and Rick Berman sat down and said, what do we want this to be? And how do we make it like that? And I think somewhere in there was a conversation of how can we make this as original series as possible?
Agreed.
And that took it out of Berman era. And that's why a lot of times maybe people don't think of Enterprise as Berman era, because this enlightened 24th century way of doing things is gone. And now you have the captain going down and getting beat up and fighting with people. This baby boomer humor and a lot more action than fringe sci-fi moments. So this doesn't feel like Berman era Trek. This is, not only is it not set in the 24th century, but I think a lot of what Star Trek endeared itself to me as through Next Gen and things I picked up on through Voyager aren't present here, and that's by design. And I think then if you were to compare Enterprise season 1 to the original series, which it's modeled after, I still don't feel like it really moves in sync there either. So
yeah, I agree in part and I disagree in part. So I'll explain. Does it feel like Berman era Trek? I would say that it's different, but I still think there's some of that DNA is still very present in the structure of the show and the overall just technical feel of it. Definitely feels like the same people made this as made Voyager. I'll say that when I'm watching it. Feels like the kind of same production company and production hands are behind it. But in terms of it being different in that it is a prequel, it is trying to show like a gritty, cutting edge at the beginning of its existence, space out exploration.
Gritty really just stood out to me.
Yeah.
The only thing that I can put my finger on when you say gritty is Broken Bow, when they go to the alien colony looking for, I think they're looking for that's where they get in the gunfight, basically. Yeah. And Trip has his moment where he's like, I think that kid's getting sold off into slavery. And like, you see some real shitty space community there. And I don't think there's been anything necessarily gritty in season 1 past that point. that's readily available to me at least.
They did almost get all their juices sucked out by space spiders.
That
was pretty
that's
gritty.
scary, but that's not like morally problematic. I don't.
They almost got rolled in a warehouse by a bunch of space truckers. I mean, some gritty things have happened.
You know what? Maybe the problem is that the budget hasn't been there to do gritty the right way. They've been able to present set pieces and say, here is a dilemma, or here is a moral situation we are having you encounter, but it hasn't been a gritty feel in the background setting.
Yeah, it's not gritty like fair trade, like grind. I guess maybe there's a difference between grimy and gritty. I think maybe that's the difference that we're talking about. Like
Sure.
the space station in Broken Bow, that was a grimy place.
Right.
It was kind of
busy.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on, and
there's an unpleasant sheen to everything that was happening.
Sure.
Gritty, I mean more like down to earth, more
grounded.
Maybe that's the right phrase, is grounded. Where I do think that it is different, and this is what the point I was getting to, which is where I kind of agree with you. It doesn't feel like prior Bourbon era Trek shows, obviously, because it feels like it's closer to reality. It is not realistic. It's still, light sci-fi in the sense that there is magical technology, but it is people who don't have answers, people who don't have the sort of level of extra support and just ability to do whatever they want. They have limitations.
Temporal war aside, I think a lot of the dilemmas that they've encountered feel a lot more accessible, and the stakes have been consistently low, which I like, because it's not Picard negotiating the future of the neutral zone, or
it's Archer trying to find the next fucking gas station.
Right. Yeah. And I think that is important for season 1, just to kind of build the stakes and grow the world. And also too, when your meta plot through it is a fucking temporal Cold War, you got to offset that with stuff that'll keep people feeling a little bit more connected. So
it's them going to Planet Olive Garden and trying to help Yennefer figure out who's poisoning
how to overthrow the local.
Who's poisoning the well? That's it. That's what that was about. Who's poisoning the well?
Who's the Captain Planet villain? We got to fist fight to get you back on track. But to the question that was posed to us specifically, is this a sci-fi show or is this an action show? I did a little breakdown, and I went, and then maybe you might get something different than me, but I rated on a 3-point scale, with there being 0 action, what I would consider low action, or what I would consider high action. And I want to say by the end,
this is the first time I've seen the Notebook in person.
I know. Well, pretty soon you're going to be seeing some fucking stickers on this bitch. So there's a little V'ger tease for you. 15 episodes I'd classify as high action, 6 I'd classify as low action, and 4 I would classify as no action. So based on those numbers, I think I would have to say that this is first and foremost absolutely an action series, and I think again that would be more in line with the original Star Trek.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that TOS is more of a horror. It's more the Twilight Zone with a little bit more of a friendly edge to it.
Which is funny because it was pitched as a wagon.
Yeah, Western. Wagon Trail to the Stars. It's like more of a Western.
Mm-hmm.
And it does have that feel to it too. But it's like a lot of terrible things happen in the original series over and over and over again. People just get murked all the time.
Sure, yeah.
So I think it made sense at the time because of the 60s and like the Twilight Zone and that sort of thing had a lot of purchase with potential viewers. But I would agree that this is much more action oriented than any Star Trek show that we've watched, and not successfully, I think is probably my major judgment. Is it is uncomfortable wearing this other set of clothing. These are not people who are very good at producing action schlock, which they apparently kind of want to do here.
And I don't think they got actors who were good at portraying action schlock.
They got actors who are good looking.
Yeah.
But that's it. They didn't get like, there's a lot of reasons to cringe at Kevin Sorbo these days, but when Hercules, the legendary Journeys, was making the rounds in the 90s in syndication, it did action schlock better than this show, and it did it on a fraction of the money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's because they knew how to deliver low budget action schlock, and they did it. These are guys who are not used to that environment. They're used to a much more, Star Trek, plotting, careful, cerebral type of shows. Not to say that things don't happen in Voyager and there aren't action sequences, but you didn't get that many shitty gunfights. You didn't. Certainly, Janeway was not suffering a head wound every 3 episodes.
Are you sure?
Just off screen,
because
explains
her
so
behavior,
much.
I think, paints a different picture.
Janeway got off-screen head wounds, and this is what explains it.
She had a shelf in her closet that was just at a bad angle.
And
all her real Swiss cheese crazy episodes, when she was getting dressed, like she stood up too quick, cracked herself, and was basically coming in.
Bonk! I'm gonna make a deal with the Borg. Bonk! I'm gonna break up with Space Mark.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she might have hit her head twice on that one.
Let's talk about one of our awards.
All right.
Let's unload the best episodes of the season. All right, because we've been a little negative, so let's make it positive. Peter, what were your best episodes?
It was not easy to pick, and this is something that I was really belly aching on before. I got fancy with the spreadsheet. I made a little. See, there's all the episodes.
Oh God, he's literally showing me the spreadsheet on his tablet.
Spreadsheets.
He does.
My rankings came up on this season. I did 1 great episode, 9 good episodes, 6 meh episodes, 4 bads, 5 trashes.
Wow. So that's a granular level of detail. I did not go into this level of detail.
Well, I had a little bit of free time on my hands.
So what were your greats? What was the top tier?
The greats?
Mm-hmm.
You know which one it is. Shockwave Part 1. And I understand your criticisms on it, but maybe if I sit there and like really focus in on, what you were painting as the low points of Archer, which I think once we broke down like the actual time codes, Archer wasn't mopies for as long as maybe you felt it was. But just going, and that's interesting too, thinking back on these, even with my notes, like some stuff that I really didn't like initially based on my notes, or even go back listening to the podcast, like I still somehow have like a much more favorable impression of it. And I don't know if that's just us busting the episode's balls and having fun. I think the real variable there is, were we able to piece together some cool what if alternate version? And that's kind of like what's lingering as a taste.
Right. Like our rewrites often color our perceptions.
But Shockwave, I came out of that episode like genuinely jazzed and engaged. And that is not a feeling that I really had that I could readily remember for anything else. But I will go with my best 3 episodes as Shockwave Part 1, which is the only one I would consider great. The Andorian Incident, which I was very hesitant on because there are lots of problems with that episode. Specifically, the action stuff. Speaking of bad action sequences.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the whole last 5 minutes is kind of rough.
Not even that, but them just being held hostage. There were so many ways to resolve that situation. And again, one of the big smoking gun in that was Archer pulling so many punches and letting the Andorians get away with not literal murder, but just torture basically, and all sorts of other shitty stuff without any clear reason as to why. So there's lots of problems in that episode. There's lots of dumb shit in that episode. But in the end, it was a great episode that did a lot of world building.
Shran is just holds the whole thing together.
It's not even Shran. It's just finally seeing a dark side of the Vulcans.
Yeah, and seeing the Andorians actually ever, right? Like, this is this critical race in the formation of the Federation, and you've just never gotten background on who the fuck these people are.
Right.
They've been nothing but like occasional background actors, but now they have a civilization and they have a personality, and there's characters from them that you care about.
My third pick was Fortunate Son, and that's the Space Trucker Justice, which I actually re-listened to the episode on that. And that one specifically is an example where we were able to write up some really cool what if.
Oh yeah.
But kind of for the same reason as the Andorian incident. I think looking at the they're not taboo, but they are effectively, these boomers are outcasts of Earth at this point. Right? They are rejecting Earth's ways, and they're not hostile, but it's the other side of the coin. And I think seeing how they act does a big part to paint the picture of what Earth is. And it was just a really strong lore building episode. I like the guest star in it.
Yeah, the boomer culture parts of that were really cool to sort of experience and understand and see how it kind of fleshes out the rest of the universe. And that's why it's one among my top 3. Spoiler alert. I completely agree. And we certainly had our fun taking the shit out of
Tons
Mayweather.
of fun.
Like comparing him to this other boomer guy who's like, as I recall, the boomer guest star was just like a total theater actor, and you could kind of completely tell in terms of his performance.
No, we actually accused Mayweather of being a theater actor, and like maybe that's why he talks the way he does and acts like.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
acting. Mm-hmm. We said the guest star. I can't remember the fucking guy's name was. Surprise, surprise. But he wasn't great, but he was good, and even in being good, he just completely outclassed.
Yeah, it was just acted him right off the screen whenever they.
And in the end, if you could have given me that character as Mayweather, I would have happily taken it.
The chief of the boat from Sequest is what that.
Well, that would be the ultimate form. I'm saying I'd even just take this dude who's got baggage of Nausicaans killing his parents or whatever. Just something. Speaking of gritty,
but my top 3. Our Andorian incident was my number 1. I'm a huge fan of Shran, and I love because that is a plot line that goes out through literally the entire rest of the show. Is the Andorians and Shran and their place in the whole tapestry of what ultimately is the beginning of the Federation. And because they start that in season 1 and like slowly continue to play it out all the way to the end, when there is a resolution that you kind of expect, given you kind of know the history of what's going to happen. But at the same time, is really neat how even how this ends, but they still leave you with tons of space to be able to experience what's going on, and uncertainty, and there's development of characters, and even like understand the background of Andoria and Vulcan, and why are they in conflict, and what's behind all of that. And that was the origin point of that. And it is probably the best story that Enterprise ends up telling over 4 seasons. And so that's why I really like it.
And all of that's the antithesis of Voyager. Even Voyager, which did clearly have a meta plot, and that was to get home. Things that touched continuity were far and few between. And that has been the saving grace for me on Enterprise Season 1, is that there has been so much callback already, and so much reuse of material and concepts in good ways throughout these shows. Even Archer's water polo bag.
Right. And then it was like this branded for this regional championship he went to at some point, probably like 10 years ago. And he still has the bag. Just such a normal thing. And it's such a cool detail to make sure you put in. Because someone's lived some life. And it's like, this is what this person would do.
What's your third?
So I guess my only difference, because I also put Fortunate Son, was I put in Broken Bow. I thought Broken Bow was the best Star Trek pilot before Strange New Worlds.
Which is such a low bar.
Yeah, low bar, but it clears it easily. It sets the tone for the whole show. It does a lot to like establish the world that you're in. It gives an interesting adventure. They do a lot. It's got the best effects of the season by far.
Well, it's got all the effects.
Yeah, they spent all the money on it. It's unfortunate. Some of the things they do in the episode, they don't really fully develop throughout the course of the season. Like when Hoshi is trying to figure out how to speak Klingon, and like the computer doesn't know how to speak Klingon, and she's like trying to translate in real time and use her language genius. And then as the season goes on, it's like more and more there is a universal translator and it works, and they kind of abandon that as a plot line. But in Broken Bow, it's actually a critical part of what's going on.
We're just sitting here praising Enterprise for keeping so many things going. I get why they backed off the universal translator thing fast, because nobody I don't understand what you're saying gets old quick. It's super realistic. It's appropriate. It should have been in there, but it's not good TV, and I don't miss it.
I do like that they at least respected their continuity enough that they didn't abandon it without comment.
Sure, yeah.
You had a sequence of events where
It
got better,
Right.
you know, and it's like, okay, so that's why we're not doing this anymore. Cool. That's enough. I get that that's what you did, but anyway, Broken Bow, I thought, was this a very good pilot for what was like a thesis statement for Enterprise, and maybe it might not be the most exciting and interesting episode of the season, but it was the most competent from beginning to end. It felt like an episode of Star Trek. It did not feel like an action adventure show. And
there was yet heavy action adventure in there, because you can be a great I would say that a core tenet of good sci-fi is strong action and adventure. At least sci-fi I like. Certainly sci-fi out there that's boring and they never, point a gun at anybody. But it shows that when you cover the science side, the sci-fi side well, the action can play in well without oversaturating it.
Points off for the grease scene, though. Like in the
and
end,
that's what I was going to get to. Is
yeah.
Every time I think about Broken Bow, it falls back to this her booby scene, and it taints the whole fucking thing.
Well, speaking of that, because it is something that our fans brought up, and it can serve as a perfect segue, and that is talking about the Sexual Objectification Award for the season.
Of course.
So, as we noted throughout our conversation over the last 26 weeks, as we reviewed this show,
how crazy is it that Tank Girl was in there somewhere?
Tank Girl preceded all of this. Well, no, you're right. When we did our initial batch before we started publishing, we did Tank Girl in there.
I keep going through my notes, trying to, and then Tank Girl keeps popping up.
You should really listen.
And every
to
time
it.
I see Tank Girl, I
cringe. Oh man, it's an unbelievable experience to listen to us talk about Tank Girl.
I'm not ready for it.
It is. I mean, it is on our Patreon, but I actually caution everyone that is to be digested only when you're ready spiritually.
Yeah, take your Malcolm McDowell in the form of Generations.
Yes, you'll hear that. We'll put that out to the public. But the show's horny as shit. I don't know how else to put it. Like, the show has got a raging middle-aged boner, and
to an ugly fault.
Yeah,
and I'm not trying to be.
We're not prudes. We're not trying to be
woke or
that's not our personality. I think everyone knows that we're not that kind of in that lane.
I love boobs.
Yeah,
I love porn. I watch a lot of porn.
But there's a level of just blatant exploitation for the sake of it in this that just comes off as gross and
pointless too.
Yeah, and it takes away from what you're watching.
It sabotages it. And Broken Bow was, the most gratuitous example of that, I think. But for the Sexual Objectification Award for me, I actually didn't even consider Broken Bow. I think that was so bad, it was just off the fucking scale. And I do think to a certain level, they never really, at least to this point, no, because they were in that fucking even the last time they were in the decontamination chamber with Hoshi, it wasn't to the point where they're rubbing. Yeah,
they were all in their underwear, but they were just sitting there.
The silk stocking, soft blue indirect light, whatever. I'm giving my objectification award to that piece of shit acquisition where T'Pol has her own concussion by banging her head into a shelf, where she's willing to put up with this Ferengi nonsense, is passive through it, knows that other female crew members are being basically enslaved and sold off, or that's what the plan is, and plays along with it, leans into being the sexy honeypot, the earlobe jack off scene.
Yeah, literally a Ferengi masturbating, at Jeffrey Combs' character. Yeah,
it was an awful episode. It was a terrible scene. And I think that gets the biggest WTF were they thinking for me.
I think you're wrong. I think there's one that you've forgotten. Maybe you've put it out of your brain.
I'll never put Vox Sola out on my brain.
Oh, no. Actually, not even Vox Sola.
Gosh.
That says the pathology of Vox Sola requires academic papers to unpack, right? I'm talking about the Shadow of Pajam and the Archer's face going right into fucking T'Pol's tits. Like, everything else that is, like, questionable in regards to the sexualization of this show is nothing compared to let's do a gag where the captain buries his face into T'Pol's tits on accident.
Physics be damned.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it makes sense.
He's so much taller. The fact that they were knee to knee, belly to belly with ropes around him, and then he falls forward and she magically slides up high. It's awful. Yeah. That was more of a her moment to me, not like a I'm going to go home and beat off to this moment where I think
it's a fetish for someone, Peter.
Yeah. The sad thing is neither of us are wrong.
Yeah.
I do want to say Shadows of a Gem. I did consider pretty heavily for one of my top 3.
Yeah, it's another one that had a lot of cool stuff going on in regards to background in the Vulcans. And
I loved the Andorians being so in the Vulcans' shit that they had like cultivated relationships with acquaintances of the Vulcans to try to undermine the Vulcans.
Yeah, and like the rebels of the governments that the Vulcans were friendly with is what the Andorians were friendly with. You know, like if the legitimate government of a planet is in the Vulcans' pocket, then the
Andorians are there.
Yeah, the criminal rabble rousers are the Andorians' friends. You know, yeah.
All right, so that's our objectification award.
Like you said, there's both winners, but we're also all losers on that award.
Where does it, when we get into season 2, 3, 4? I mean, is that shit still going on? Do they grow out of it or
grow out of it? Yeah, season 4 isn't really. They don't have time. I mean, it's very tight. I don't really recall any in season 4. I will say there's definitely some sexy time shit in season 3. In fact, some pretty the most explicit that I think the show gets is in season 3, but it is in service to plot. Like, shit's going on and it's like related to what's going on. It's not for the sake of doing it. So they definitely at least maintain it through that. Season 4, I think that's probably when they finally give it up.
Real quick, I want to flip back over to our top 3 picks because something that I thought was interesting was looking at where this show is after their first season and comparing it to Voyager.
Yeah.
So we already put our top 3 on there. Can you pull it up?
Yeah, sure.
It was a small one. So we didn't do top 3 episodes. We just did top episode when we were discussing Voyager season 1. But your pick, my pick was Prime Factors, which I still stand by. And again, I understand the shortcomings, but that's the Vlad Goldblum and the Skeevians. Like, just a great rework of the traditional Federation being the superior technology, and at this time Voyager was at the disadvantage, and it was.
It's a good episode. I didn't rank it as my best just because I was in love with the structure of Eye of the Needle.
Right.
I just like the juxtaposition of Janeway and Kim and Tuvok and B'Elanna and how they see the circumstances and how they flip. It was so particularly well written and executed that is why it was my favorite, because that kind of like grace when it comes to the writing of this show is not common.
No.
And that's why it stuck out. But Prime Factors was still very good.
So my question to you is, where would you put your top pick from season 1 of Voyager versus what Enterprise was able to produce on your top 3?
Well, I'd have to take a closer look at all the episodes of season 1, but off the top of my head, I always think of Chitrell as sort of like a midpoint of season 1.
No, I'm saying taking Eye of the Needle from season 1 of Voyager and putting it up against your season 1 picks.
Oh, crush them all. Like, not even close. I would not put the best episode of Enterprise against season 1 versus the best episode of season 1 of Voyager ever. Like, Eye of the Needle is genuinely good television, in my opinion. I wouldn't even put it up against Prime Factors.
Really?
Yeah. I'd say Prime Factors is way better than any of the 3 I picked.
Wow. Because I was about to say, like, Prime Factors had some hook. God, I don't. You know what? I think I'm going to agree with your standpoint.
Tuvok gets involved in a mutiny with Seska against the captain.
I know. It's the stuff dreams are made of. Yeah, again, Shockwave being my top pick. There's nothing else I'm seeing on my good list. Voyager had way more ugly parts than Enterprise did, but Enterprise wasn't able to break past. And speaking of that, let's take a closer look at some of these valleys.
Yeah. So this is the fun part. One of the worst episodes of the season. I'm going to go first on this.
Okay.
Number 1 with a bullet. Acquisition. I know. It's a shock.
Dun, dun, dun.
Listen. That was some rancid fucking television. All right? It was like, whose idea was this? It didn't work as comedy. It didn't work as a show with stakes. It didn't work in continuity.
Didn't work with common sense.
And then they waste amazing guest star talent. They pull in Ethan Phillips,
close personal friend of mine.
Close personal friend of the pod, Ethan Phillips.
Yeah.
They bring in their secret sauce, Jeffrey Combs. They already used twice in the season. Throw him in fucking a bunch of fucking Ferengi makeup. And then
maybe he showed up late to work a couple days and this was his punishment.
Am I going in to be Shran again? Is that it? No.
Maybe Ethan Phillips, they just wanted to make sure he'd never want anything to do with Star Trek again, so they brought him on this one to burn him out. I wonder if Ethan Phillips does cameos, and if we could pay for a cameo for him to actually talk about his experience on that. If looking back now, free of whatever contractual obligations he had to Starlog to say nice things, if he'd be willing to MF that episode as well.
Now that you're in the clear, and here's $100 or whatever it's going to cost.
Now that you've ascended to Better Call Saul status, tell us about that. Acquisition. What do you need to say that we haven't already said?
Yeah.
If there was any doubt as to why Acquisition would be on the worst 3-episode list, then you need to go back and listen to that episode. And we will tell you in excruciating detail what the fuck is wrong with that piece of shit.
I also hated Terra Nova.
Fuck you.
You're gonna fuck me over Terra Nova?
Terra Nova I actually put on my good list.
As a person who hates episodes where people talk funny,
I know
I'm shocked that you've given such grace to this episode.
Will you tell me what you didn't like first, or why you thought it was bad enough that you're putting on the worst 3 list?
Okay. I am not a fan of episodes where they spend the majority of their time in a bunch of fucking dirty caves. That's not fun for me. Spoiler alert, my next one's Strange New World, right? Another episode that's spent with a lot of time just hanging out in caves yelling at each other. I don't find that interesting. I don't find that fun. I just thought the concept that these children were suddenly reverted to cavemen immediately in the course of not exactly a very long time seemed a little fucking wild. That no one ever sent the fucking Vulcans or anyone to go check on them.
I thought that was one of the best parts of the episode, is that Earth was shitty.
The idea that they would be shitty with lives on the line, especially children, seems so petty. It's beyond reason. It's one thing to be shitty when there's no stakes.
Sure.
But it's different when there's people will die if I don't get over my ego and ask the Vulcans to go check on what the fuck
real
happened.
Shame of Terra Nova is that they didn't ever, or up to this point, and the way you make it seem they never will, show what is the terrible price that Vulcans extract from Earth in return for favors. Because that is super high stakes, what was going on there initially. And I agree with everything you're saying, that it should have been done. And I have to wonder, what did Vulcan want?
Right. What's the iron price that it's so difficult to pay? No, I would love to know, but because we don't know, it's a bunch of submachine guns and cave songs.
It's J.J. Abrams
and dirt, and it's Fraggle Rock, and I'm not into it.
I liked it from a world building standpoint. I actually put this as one of the good episodes, and I stand by it. A big chunk of the episode's crappy or whatever, but I like that it was low stakes, but still a big fucking deal. It was Earth rectifying its own mistakes.
And you're a big fan of friendship is magic being the way the episode ends. Obviously, you love that stuff.
Friendship is man.
Yeah, remember at the end he's got to like help save the guy by like moving the fucking tree trunk.
Shooting the tree off. Well,
Give me my gun back.
That
must-
part's lame, but them relocating instead of putting it out. And this is another episode that I will say is absolutely contaminated by us sitting there and brainstorming how to do it better. I think had they made that an ultra militant, like technologically advanced outpost that they had to like patch up as a forward operating base and like get good space, get phaser technology, a million and one ways that could have been better. But as it was, for being a basic ass enterprise episode,
they needed to be some like Fallout 4 style survivalists with like hypertech that they've developed to fend off like raiders and shit.
Any way they would have done it would have been better than the mud people, but
well, they did mud people, so it's in my 3 worst. And then my last on my list is Strange New World, because this is an episode that is entirely exists because Archer decided that safety is for losers, and we're just going to beam down, or not beam down. They're going to just take shuttlecraft down to this planet.
With my dog.
Yeah, with my dog. And it's going to pee on things. Go, hope there's no loincloth wearers. We got an exception to that.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully we won't all get high as shit on hallucinogens and try and kill each other. Oops. And then a guy gets beamed back and he's got a brain bruise now because there's like sticks in there.
Yeah, that's why it's a good episode.
Like that's literally it. That's like that is the only thing that happens in the episodes that's interesting, is that like beaming someone's hazardous, and that like helps explain why they're stuck down there. Like that's clever. Everything else is like, this is only happening because Archer took very salient safety advice from his first officer and was like,
YOLO. YOLO. I have good memories from it. I put it as a good episode. It was the classic away team blunder. I think there would have been.
We came up with a great title. The away team fighter discovers reefer madness.
I would have liked to see there be lingering effects of people second guessing Archer's away team policies, and just people like, man, remember, sent us down to
continuity would have helped.
LSD, Planet LSD.
It would if it mattered long term. It's a different story. I agree, but it doesn't. So.
I also liked watching Mayweather get pinched down the neck.
Okay, Mr. Smarty Pants, what's your 3 worst then?
I'm gonna go with obviously Acquisition.
Sure.
I'm gonna go with that piece of shit Shuttlepod 1.
Go fuck yourself, sir. You mean a lovely stage play? Of 2 men trying to work their way through a traumatic situation and
fucking miserable, and
finding commonality in their struggle.
The first real entry into Reed sucks ass.
It's like the only episode I actually liked Reed in.
You got bad taste. I don't know what to tell you.
Because Reed is going through all of these emotions, and you find out like he's a fucking ladies' man and all this other stuff. He fucked the girl that
he said he's ladies' man, but then we see how he acts on Ryza, and he might be something quite different. Shuttle 1, Pod 1. It, as much as you don't like being in the caves, I don't like being stuck in a flying fucking bunk bed and watching those two get on my nerves. The third one I went with was Desert Crossing. And the real nail in the coffin for Desert Crossing for me is that for whatever potential there was in that episode, instead, over half of it was the shitty desert survival adventure that was just literally a drag.
The first half of that episode saves it from the bottom for me. The first half, there's a lot.
You talking about the shirtless lacrosse game?
Obviously, I love it when Trip takes his shirt.
I hate it when it's T'Pol walking around greasy with hard nipples, but when it's Archer the bear and greasy Trip,
yeah, Trip that Adonis, that Florida Adonis, that tanned man. From a lot of time in Fort Lauderdale or whatever. But that first half of that episode, when they're dealing with, somebody who's heard stories about them from their own exploits, about how cool they are.
There's
about
cool
doing
stuff
shit.
in there. Clancy Brown was a big point of contention for me. I didn't like his portrayal in that, but it's not even Clancy Brown's goofy Arab caricature. It's just the fucking desert drag. And let's go ahead and flip that on its side now. Voyager we did worst episodes, I think, but I grabbed a couple off our notes. And going through Voyager, I see that Time and Again, which was the Candy Cord tragedy, right?
Oh,
That's the one where
god awful.
where Janeway shoots the problem with the temporal anomaly with the phaser and kills it, and everything's fine.
After they spend the entire episode building that it is Kes that somehow is going to solve
Jedi powers, right?
Yeah.
Ex Post Facto, which is like a drill going through the fucking temple.
The beginning of Detective Tuvok is the death of creativity.
A hokey plot that is so convoluted that Starfleet was not at all required, using the fantastic technology of these people to smuggle information off. Emanation. I put Emanations there. I know you love Emanation, so let's not shit on that one too hard. And then, of course, the fucking Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Which was
get a little pee out.
It was an episode of no A plot, but a lot of F plots.
Like multiple F plots.
Mm-hmm. Is anything off of what we have listed in our bottom three, did any of them manage to even get worse than any of the ones we just described? I'll take Emanations off. I will be benevolent. I'll just remove Emanations because there was a disagreement on that.
Okay, fair enough. I would say that Acquisition is easily in the mix with those, but I will say that Voyager's worst episodes of season 1 are, to me, manifestly worse as a unit than the worst episodes of season 1 of Enterprise.
Acquisition is some potent rancid trash.
I would still say it's 4th worst.
I would say that
it's in the mix, but it's 4th worst.
Even though it was fucking rat piss, it didn't drag.
Yeah.
It didn't I wasn't clawing my eyes out trying to fast forward cursing that I can't watch these fucking episodes at a faster rate. Can you do that on Paramount Plus?
I haven't tried. There is the skip 10 seconds, which I sometimes liberally touch.
Well, I mean, you've already been there, but if I could watch some of the fucking duds at 1.5, that would be
probably
cool.
Can.
Well, I mean, I can. I don't know.
I pay $10 a month for the privilege, sir.
Rube.
Probably.
But I don't think, God, Ex Post Facto and Ex Post Facto specifically, just a miserable waste of time. So, again, Enterprise not punching higher than its weight class, but also not
punching lower. Acquisition was the worst episode of the season. It's a consensus pick on our part, and I would watch that again before I'd watch any 3 of those episodes you mentioned after eliminating
Real quick, I want to touch base on this just because I did put the work in it. My bads were Unexpected, which was the baby episode, and that was the first bad episode I'd say we watched of Voyager, of Enterprise. Breaking the Ice, which was just who cares and slow and stupid.
Yeah, agreed.
Civilization, which was Olive Garden.
Yeah, to clarify, I liked I liked a lot of the things they set up in Unexpected. It just kind of fell.
The execution.
The execution wasn't there, and I thought Civilization was great in this, the guest star. Yennefer of the Olive Garden was actually really cool.
Yeah,
and that. The fact that it was a fucking Captain Planet episode, otherwise, a
clownish Captain Planet episode.
Yeah, with a terrible gunfight at the end, where they
the
just
first of
up.
many. Bad.
Yeah, but Planet Olive Garden and Yennefer was definitely saved that from the gutter for sure.
I also put Detained as a bad. Dean Stockwell was good, but there's too much wrong with that episode.
It's too much of a message episode. It's too much Japanese internment is bad,
and just being dumb, especially. Again, you can go back and listen to us go on it, but the trash episodes I had, Rogue Planet, Acquisition, Desert Crossing, and then I got Vox Sola on there, which we haven't really talked about.
Okay, yet. Before we talk, because we've already been talking for close to an hour.
I drove 2 hours.
I know, but we might talk an hour again about Vox Sola. So before we get into that,
it's so bad that the dial has clicked over 10 and it has found a place to go to 11.
Rogue Planet is an interesting episode in the texture of season 1, because we haven't talked about it yet. I don't think we were not in love with it.
No,
but we also didn't hate it.
No, yeah, I did not hate it.
I mean, you put it on your worst list.
Right.
So it was definitely like your lower strata, right?
It was not painful to watch. It's painful to go back and think about.
Yeah, like it had the sort of things that a Star Trek episode has.
Yes.
Like, here's a weird planet. Here's some aliens who are doing things there. We're gonna have the crew interact with it, and there's gonna be another like layer to it, and then they're gonna have to unravel the space mystery. It's all there,
Mm-hmm.
yet it definitely didn't work, right? Like that didn't come together.
What I didn't like about Rogue Planet was I felt like it was the writers trying to manipulate me into something.
Yeah, like they were like wanted you. It was like, again, it was too much message.
It
like
was preachy and
trophy hunting is bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's what they were trying to tell you. Like, okay, but you didn't. You set these guys up as so reasonable. I can't. That was, I think, what was weird. And this is us. This is an interesting.
Reading too deep.
This is us. This is an interesting thing that you and I do, and not just about Enterprise, but about Star Trek in general. We tend to see the jackbooted thugs as very reasonable, right? Like,
are we the baddies?
Are we like, and maybe that's because we have more real politic views of the world because that's our personalities and why we're friends anyway.
Sure.
But when they set up the big game hunters, they made it clear like this is something we hunt sustainably. There's only a certain amount of times we can, days we can be here. It's like religious like journey for our people to be here to like honor our ancestors. Like they've given a sort of like almost Native American style sort of like pitch to it.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, you do all of that, and then you try to tell me they're bad at the end? Like, yeah, you did a lot to try and convince me these guys were pretty reasonable, and they act reasonable, and they're pretty, like, gracious to this Starfleet crew that's kind of fucking with their hunt.
The more we talked about it, the more I saw the behavior of the Wraith as instinctual, and that it wasn't, maybe the sentience wasn't there, and that there were defense mechanisms or just a hallucinogenic angle that Archer was playing himself like a fool.
But that episode didn't feel like it worked because the episode tried to convince us of the things it told us was wrong. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
These hunters are fine. Like, they're not the bad guys that you're trying to make.
If they were the bad guys, they'd be dead by the end.
Yeah. Or they would have done something more clearly villainous, which they never do.
No.
Vox Sola. Peter.
Vox Sola just gets so bad that it just turns into it transcends into the room.
Yeah,
and the fact that it's and this is let's jump up here. The best episode directed by a Star Trek alumni. It was Roxanne Dawson, and I think this was her inaugural episode to direct. To fucking saddle somebody with the Bukkake episode is such raw hazing, spite and misery. Or maybe Roxanne Dawson got the script and said, "This is going to be a cum monster." I know that they wanted it to be like black and like blue.
Yeah, I'm gonna make
this is going to be fucking jizz, and this is going to be a message episode about Hollywood. And if once you get involved in Hollywood, you're just trapped in cum, and everybody's dirty, everybody hates it, and you lose your own sense of identity. And now you're a part of this thing that you never want anything to do with, and there's just jizz all in your hair, and it's terrible.
I will never escape from the image of her with the monitor that's in Memory Alpha, right? Mm-hmm. Like she's directing it.
Yeah,
she's got her fucking cans on.
Put it in his eye,
right here,
more in his eye.
Yeah,
I used to fucking hate Quantum Leap, and my boyfriend would always make me watch it. Yeah, no, put it more in Scott's eye.
It's like she's in the monitor. She's looking at Bakula, and the monitor is like, more cum. This requires more. I need it thicker. All right, I need it frothier. Mm-hmm. All right, get the props guy. Get the props guy in here. I need frothier cum. I need more bubbles in my cum.
And she got him.
She did.
Again, the amazing part of Vox Sola is that I had never seen a screenshot or heard anything about that prior to watching. It was completely, I was completely virgin to that.
I had like vaguely remembered there was like a monster, and I'm like, I don't really remember this one very well. I can't wait. We'll watch it again. And I'm like, the cum. It's cum.
It's an awful episode, but it's a must watch. It is The Room.
It
Tommy
is The Room.
It was the touch of Tommy Wiseau.
It is. I think the room comparison makes sense because something can be so bad it no longer is bad, and that's just a sort of transcendent state. And Vox Sola, maybe the only episode of Star Trek I ever watched that reached that. Like even Threshold, in its maddening last 5 minutes, does not reach the 45 minutes of nonstop cum action.
Yeah,
as Vox Sola.
Yeah, and also too, I mean, you limited because Threshold was pretty legit great sci-fi. And going back to that real quick, like I think that's Vox Sola might be the farthest into fringe sci-fi that season 1 got. Like, yeah, the temporal war is there, but like in terms of like alien, ridiculous, complicated stuff, like Vox Sola, I think really is the
to invent horse fields and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happens there.
And to think, Joe, you thought you told me before we watched Terra Nova, or after we watched Terra Nova, that you thought that was as bad of a season as we.
Listen, that was still my bottom 3.
Yeah, well, not mine.
There is one award suggested by our colleagues in the trauma support group, and I want to honor that request, and that is the Change of the Heart Award.
Very fitting.
So you sang the song.
You've
never sung before. No, that was a new experience for both of us.
I brought everybody into my shower.
You did, and we were grateful to be there. But it led to a trope that we saw developing, which is Archer's change of hearts.
No, man, the trope was there before, because we did.
Because it was Dear Doctor.
It was Dear Doctor. Yeah. But I mean, there were plenty of examples on the table already. My change of heart award was Archer suddenly not wanting to drop into places uninvited, because in the fight or flight, he's like, no, we're going to go to this fucking, we're hailing this transport. They're not responding. For all intents and purposes, they want nothing to do with us. Dock the ship, maybe blow the fucking hatch off, and we're going to say hello to these people, whether they like it or not. We're going to shake their goddamn hands, because that's what we do, we're Americans. To all of a sudden, by the time we get to the Andorian incident, oh, well, I'd like to swing by and see the super civilized, nice Buddhist temple you guys have, but I don't want to show up unannounced and, be rude or anything.
Well, he was very wanting to go down and do it, and kind of forced T'Pol into facilitating it, but did honor the rules of going to visit. And I think that's like close enough. That's close enough for government work.
Actually, and I forgot I had a second entry in here. It was Archer cooperating with the Andorians, strong-arming him into, basically betraying the Vulcans, right? And you want to say, and of course the counter to that is his behavior in detention when Colonel Grott's like, hey, we should exchange information about these space terrorists. And he goes, no, I don't cooperate. I don't like people strong-arming and things. And like literally the Andorians just beating the fuck out of him, repeatedly demanding that he give up information he doesn't have. And he gets like, not Stockholm, but like just real cooperative, nice and easy going with these dudes. Obviously, in the end, that's the right move, and that paid off, but just real flip-flop nature on him. What's yours?
When he goes back and forth in the, was it Living Hero? Fallen Hero.
Mm-hmm.
Fallen Hero. So, like...
Data's mom.
Yeah, Data's mom. I don't want to help. Okay, I'll help. Okay, we'll take her home. Okay, let's go back and give her back. Okay, let's go back to the Vulcan ship.
Let's waste a ton of fucking time when we know dudes are going for us.
He's flip-flops 4 different times on 2 different plot points in that fucking episode, and that's what actually causes the crisis at the end.
Yeah,
that necessitates
cost that MRI imaging chamber its door.
And exactly, that's expensive. That's an expensive door. My goodness, those machines are not cheap. That's what I'm saying. Is Archer made of MRI machines? I don't think so. So, one award we give out every season, but we've already discussed what it's going to be.
You know what it's going to be.
And it's time to give it its due.
Okay.
Because I mentioned, and I would like to hold to this, that after we have this discussion, we have to let it go. We have to let it go. We cannot spend the next years of our life bringing up this moment in Star Trek Enterprise. And
I will reduce the frequency that I cite Dear Doctor, but I think about that. I got mad in the car all over. Like, how could... If I saw my daughter dying before my eyes and I found out this motherfucker that I had, like there was a fan theory that the Breen, these dudes in suits, like
it turned into the Breen. Yeah,
I haven't seen, because that's a Deep Space Nine thing.
Correct.
There's a little TOS in there, maybe.
No, it's all Deep Space Nine. Yeah,
I haven't seen it, but like being turned into this Mr. Freeze, or what's a Mass Effect dude that Tali was.
Oh, holy shit! How do I not know this?
Whatever, man. If I found out that somebody could have saved millions, billions of lives, whatever, and just didn't arbitrarily, I would fucking hunt that guy down and gut him. Like, unforgivable.
It's the weakest shit of season 1 of Enterprise.
Hands down.
Cannot be anything except when, for the flintiest and stupidest and least developed reasons possible,
the reason literally is there's nothing to govern the way we act.
Dr. Phlox manages to convince Archer to allow hundreds of millions of innocent Mr. Rogers sweater-wearing aliens,
the most reasonable aliens they have ever met in the solar system, or in the galaxy,
to allow them to suffer and slowly die out as a species,
and give them a consolation prize of heroin,
despite having cured their disease while in orbit, and not share that information with them.
Do you think he reported to Admiral Forrest,
like, this is what happened?
This is the truth, and really, we could very easily just go back there and say, hey, look.
I think that is where you have to let it go, right? Like, this is why I actually agree. Like, I'm semi-serious in talking about you have to let it go, because the actual answer to that is he would have reported it, and then Admiral Forrest would have been like, are you fucking crazy? Go back there and give those people that fucking medicine. Like, the logic of this episode does not stand up to a moment's moral reasoning. Not 1 second.
Not moral reasoning, not common sense.
Nothing. Like, if you're Earth...
It is the antithesis of the mission they are on.
Yes. Like, if there is zero reason to accept this as a logical thing to do if you're in Archer's position, okay? Let's put Phlox aside for a second, because Phlox is an alien with different kinds of medical ethics, okay? So maybe he's got this, like, dyed-in-the-wool appreciation for...
He's not a part of the structure that is paid for this ship to go out there and be doing this stuff.
He is but a man, and he's an alien, and he has a different way of looking at the universe. Let's accept that for a moment. Archer has every reason to do this. As a captain of the lead diplomatic vessel of Earth's exploration into the stars, he has every reason to do this. And if he were to report this information back to his superior, he would no doubt order him to be like, turn your ship around, go back there, and give those poor people the fucking,
morally, and also too, we are going to have allies for life.
Yeah.
And if it's not us giving them, if you were able to whip up this fucking cure 15 minutes up in space over this planet, everybody else can. And I would rather them be our friends than them be our enemies. And God forbid if this information ever got out that you withheld it.
Yeah, like, are you kidding me? These people are going to be our
bosom buddies. They're
away
from warp travel already.
Yeah, they're almost there. We can stop by. They can be a full... They're going to be fucking forever grateful to our asses.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, like, of course you would do this. It's not only morally correct, it's, like, strategically and diplomatically correct.
So, yeah, I get it. It's bad writing.
And, yeah,
point blank.
It is terrible.
It's worse writing than Acquisition, which was just rancid.
It's not the worst episode of the season, because the episode itself
is great, and that's the real war crime.
Fantastic.
The everything else, and Dear Doctor, I put as a good episode.
Yeah,
minus
I would say it's
this
a good episode
fucking fatal flaw. Whatever you want to say bad about Threshold, and the last 5 minutes being maddening in that, this completely fucking laps. This is well beyond even what happened in Jatral in terms of the weakest shit.
Yeah, this dethrones Jatral as the ultimate weakest shit. This is a piece of writing that does not stand up to even the most basic reasoning. Like, how did this get through the writer's
This
room?
TV show can't give me a bad guy I can sink my teeth into for the life of it. Even fucking Silic, I think, is charming and personable and is probably an okay dude. You know, the fucking Space Sticks guys, Colonel Grodd, all these guys that are supposed to be the fucking bad guys. And the biggest bad guys in the entire season, even the fucking spider people draining juices, the biggest fucking criminal bad guys of season 1 of Enterprise is Phlox and fucking Archer.
That's why it's the weakest shit. That defines it right there.
So we're talking about characters. Let's wrap this up with your best character for this season.
It's Shran. I'm going to say it first. It's Shran. It's not even close.
I'm sitting there and I'm like scratching my head and I'm thinking, I'm like, well, Phlox has been pretty solid, but Dear Doctor, and he's a motherfucker. And even that, I mean, Phlox isn't the bad guy in that episode because he is there to represent an alien, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hoshi's kind of this potted plant. Reed, I'll get into later, along with Mayweather. Trip pissed me off more times than I was expecting. Archer, whatever, and T'Pol doesn't take enough agency for herself. Yeah, the best character, Shran.
not even close.
He's in enough that he makes an impact. I know he's going to be around more. He knows what he's about, and he does it. And
got a real fucking personality to him. He's got a fucking mission to him. Everything about him exudes his personality. Like, Combs just like, this guy's super militant and aggressive, and
he's the strongest part of Shadows of Pajem. Like, that is the real fun part of the episode for me, is that he doesn't want to help the humans, but he's got this own code of conduct.
He's too honorable to admit that he owes these people,
and he has to get the tricorder back.
Yeah, he's got to make sure that he pays this debt, or he's not.
So he can sleep well.
Yeah. I like that. If I were to pick an actual cast member for this award,
obviously.
Yeah, duh.
Porthos is my first.
A beagle that doesn't bark all the time. That's definitely
that's also unbelievable.
No, but it'd be Phlox.
That's your real fringe science there.
Phlox would be my favorite character. And
yeah,
he's interesting. He has a personality to him. He's he's different, and you get to find out how and
his
why.
Quirks are fun, like his little eating scenes where he's like stealing celery off T'Pol's plate.
His relationship with Crewman Cutler,
yeah,
I thought that was all interesting. But yeah, let's go to a more
V'ger, please.
Entertaining topic. What's the worst character of
it should be Mayweather, because I dread anytime I have to watch this guy fucking move his mouth on screen. But thankfully, the show pushes him into the background heavily and limits exposure to him. And I would say anytime I'm seeing him, he's actually got a really good chance of getting hurt, because it was him that twisted his leg in the Asteroid episode, right?
Yeah, and he also got hurt in 2 days, 2 nights.
I'm going to tell you right now, for as much as Archer got his ass kicked as reparations for how much Torres and Tuvok fucking took it on the chin, I'm still noticing the black dudes getting beat up. But the worst character for me is Reed. Starting with Shuttlepod 1, he was painting the picture of him was interesting in what was it? What's the pineapple cake?
Oh,
Silence.
Yeah, because it's the episode where the butt probe aliens are going to kill them all, but Hoshi has to find out what kind of cake he likes.
That's what really, that was a cool episode. That was also the episode saddled with this fucking ridiculous A.5 plot
of the cake. Yeah,
it's not even the B plot. It's as much screen time as that. Also, I want to say,
we might all die. Hey, Hoshi, did you find out what kind of food?
Yeah, but what's his favorite food? Also, Oasis. I want to say, while I was going through my notes, I had to check what episode Oasis was every time I saw the page. I'm like, what fucking episode?
It's the Tom Bergeron episode.
You mean the
that's what
episode?
It's the Tom Bergeron episode.
Shh, don't say that. My phone might hear you and fucking saddle me with more. No, but fucking Reed, just he was bad, and every time they used him, it just got worse and worse. And I hate to say it, but if anybody was going to die season 1, at this point, I'd rather it be Reed, even though Mayweather's fucking miserable. Although if Reed did die, Mayweather might be there more, so maybe I should just sack Mayweather. I don't know. Who's yours?
Well, forced to agree with a lot of what you said. I'm more warm to Reed, I think, than you are, just because I kind of like that he's this stuffy British guy and that he's got this kind of standoff relationship with people, and he's difficult for him to connect with others.
That's not the stuff.
He's got a personality. Now, it's a degrading and irritating personality, but they wanted him to be that way, and he is. So I think that's Mayweather just sucks because his personality doesn't shine through his actor's inability.
Let me also levy against Reed them having him do Mary Sue shit, like invent shields.
I mean, it's only effective against cum monsters. It's not that good a shield.
Well,
I mean, if
I've
they
never
wanted
seen the true science behind phasers. I can't guarantee what the semen count in phase weaponry is, but yeah, Mayweather's just terrible.
Mayweather.
Are you saying Mayweather? Or are you saying the actor?
So this is what the line I was about to parse. The worst character, the worst actor, is different to me.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with Mayweather as a character. There's nothing wrong with him. He's just played by someone who has no talent. He doesn't do anything really wrong. He doesn't do anything objectionable.
Here's what's wrong about Mayweather, and I think part of why I've got the axe to grind with him is that we've come up with 8 different versions of that character, and they're all fucking stellar, and this is the worst version he could be.
He's a problem. I agree. He's a problem. He's a huge lead weight on the show, but it's because the actor sucks, and really the character is fine. Like, there's nothing he does that's objectionable or bad. It's just every time he's on screen, you're like, oh, please, just let's get his lines over with, right? Like, so I don't see him as the worst character, and I don't see Reed as the worst character. The worst character is T'Pol. Okay, like T'Pol is just given no agency at all in any of the episodes that are supposed to be about her, and it is so awful. Again, I'm not like faulting the actress in this regard.
No.
But her character is the worst because she is defined by the actions of others and not herself.
Her character is great until she is the focus, and then she is not the focus because of the script. So she has huge holes.
Yeah.
There's a great structure there with a lot of missing stairs, and those stairs are scenes where she should be taking the agency, and then we've hit on this a lot, but
yeah,
if she's not the focus or the script is intentionally not keeping the ball away from her, I think she's been consistently good. I like them having shown these lurking desires under her crust, and I see the direction they're going to go with her. But everything you're saying is right. I still can't fucking put her on top of Reed or Mayweather, but there are big faults, and I really hope that moving into season 2, they fix them.
Well, speaking of season 2, Leisure Please audience, you can count on hearing our reviews of that in the near future. What you're going to hear first, after our rip here, is our interview with John Morris, the creator, author, creative force behind Voyager Season 8. So we're going to talk to him about that project, what led him to it, how much he plans to do, what other pieces of that he wants to put out in the world. You know, he's talking about doing like an animation and some other things. So can't wait to talk to him about that. He's definitely on our wavelength when it comes to what we did about Voyager. So it is fun to see someone really take the ball and run with it to actually create the continuation and then potential actual end of that story that Voyager never got. So look forward to that. And then the week after that, you will hear us, but we'll be talking about Star Trek Generations. So Peter and I watched and reviewed Generations for our Patreon subscribers a few months ago. And rather than have you all have to watch, Tank Girl, we thought it would be better if instead the other Malcolm McDowell movie that we reviewed would be a better choice. So we'll put that out there for everyone to enjoy. And then the following week after that is when you will hear our review of Shockwave Part 2, and we will be venturing in to...
When are we recording that? I'm like fucking legit excited to watch that.
Well, I'm going to stop the recording and we can figure out our schedule the rest of No one else needs to hear that. But thank you very much to all of the VG Please faithful out there. We would literally, shout into the void if there was one of you listening. The fact that there are hundreds of you, the fact that there's hundreds of you listening continues to kind of be a bit of an amazement to us. So we appreciate it. And join our Facebook group, VG Please Trauma Support Group. Tweet at us at VGPlease. Email us at VGPlease@gmail.com. Join our Discord, or there's perma links on Facebook. You can always hit me up in DMs on any of our social media. I'll give it to you. We love to talk to you guys.
Link on the Twitter page?
I haven't posted there in a while. I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. Anyway, point is, join us for all of our discussions. It's like the coolest, chillest Star Trek discussion, posse you'll ever find. So you should definitely be a part of it. And we will see you next week.